Greetings everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first video back in far too long. So just to dive right into it, there was a lot going on. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but it was a lot of personal stuff and a lot of things that needed doing and things that I needed to confront. So yeah, we're not going to worry about that right now, but I decided that my first video back was actually going to be a comparison between two different types of paper. I recently went to Michael's because I was low on my Strathmore mixed media paper, which I like using. Realized I ran out of paper in like all of them but one, and I was about halfway through that book. So I went to go pick up some of that, and then while I was at Michael's, I saw that they had something that kind of caught my interest. Strathmore 300 series cold press paper and Strathmore 400 series cold press paper. Now, I like my Strathmore paper, however, I've never actually used their watercolor because almost my entire life that I was drawing, I never really had an interest in cold press, and by the time, or watercolor I should say, and by the time I started watercolor painting, I'd already had bad run-ins with cold press paper before, like the Michael's brand Artist Loft and the Canson XL cold press paper, which is the one that I most recently tried. Still wasn't a great experience, but I really like my Strathmore sketchbooks, so I had a little more faith in these, but it really did beg the question that was always lurking at the back of my mind: is there really that much of a difference between these two sketchbooks or watercolor pads and just the 300 and 400 series in general? Now, this is only a comparison of the watercolor paper, but I figure there will be similarities in their other paper types. So yeah, we're gonna dive right into that. I don't use cold press paper pretty much ever, and I only really use Arches hot press. I do have Fabriano hot press, which kind of was my segue into the Arches, but let's see if I even liked this cold press paper, how I felt about my experience, and any differences that I noticed between the two at all. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, tea, water, whatever tickles your fancy, and let's just dive right into it, shall we? Starting off on the 300 series, I decided that I was going to sketch up Yasha. This was a little bit of a redraw challenge to myself. I'd previously drawn him in May of 2018 when I was humoring the idea of watercoloring. Now, for the 400 series, I decided that I was going to actually draw his half-brother, Sesshomaru. It just made sense to use both of these characters and not do the same one twice. I was using the same watercolors for both, so at the end of the day, it didn't matter who I drew, really. And you'll see that there is a difference in color. The 400 series was actually more of an off-white, whereas the 300 was more of a whiter white. And just a side note, I forgot to hit record during the inks for Inuyasha. It was a little bit of a time saver for me in the grand scheme of things, just because it gave me less footage to have to trim down for this. One thing I did notice when I was sketching, though, was when I finished the Inuyasha sketch, aside from the difference in color of paper, there's definitely different texture on both. So the 300 is toothier, the 400 series is a bit more smooth and a little more what I'm used to. But those are really the only two differences I really noted during the early stages of working on both of these. Now, when it came to inking, I feel like there was less lifting of the ink during the erasing process on the 300 series versus the 400. It seemed like the 400 didn't quite absorb the ink as well, but it's not really a deal breaker, to be completely honest, but that was really the only other thing that I noticed. Moving on to the actual watercolor portion of this video, you're going to see me bounce back and forth between Inuyasha and Sesshomaru. Just because I was working on both of these pieces simultaneously, so every time I felt like I was nearing a point where I could potentially overwork the paper, I would switch it out to the other piece, and I would just continue that cycle throughout the entirety of working on these. The watercolors that I decided to use were the Kuretake Gonzai Tambi and the Stuart Semple set that I have, and overall, it was a fairly smooth process, especially when I compare it to my past experience with the Artist Loft and the Canson XL cold press papers. By far, I will say that if I were to recommend a cold press just based on my own usage, I would recommend either one of these two pads, to be completely honest. And I did not pull any punches while working on either of these. So I didn't handle the paper with kids' gloves or anything like that, because I can be pretty heavy when I'm working on a piece. That said, I was also trying a bit of a different technique where I put more water into my palettes and kind of really watered down the colors. So that was a little bit of a newer technique, but I will say when comparing the two, I had a significantly more difficult time getting the red down any kind of even on the 300 series, and as you can see with Inuyasha's attire, it's got quite a bit of red, so it was a rather large area for me to have to work over and over and over again, so that was pretty time consuming. Whereas with the 400 series, for the red that is on Sesshomaru's clothing, I used the Kuretake set, which usually I have a very hard time with the red staining in a very uneven manner, and I had an easier time with that as opposed to the Stuart Semple on Inuyasha's. I do think that the 400 series did handle the watercoloring process much better than the 300 series if I had to really examine it. It was definitely smoother sailing working on Sesshomaru versus Inuyasha, because the wash went down very splotchy on Inuyasha's, whereas it went down pretty evenly on Sesshomaru's. So having that in mind, if I had to say which one worked better for me, it would definitely be the 400 series. But the one thing that I had an issue with when it came to both of them was during the salt washing process. During the application itself, it wasn't bad, but when it came to actually getting the salt off of the paper, you'll see when I start taking it off that it left white spots. And as you saw, I put down 2 layers of color and it still pulled the top layer of the paper off during the scraping process. And this happened with both of them. So that is something that I wasn't super crazy about, but I was able to work around it pretty decently. Now, for the final steps, I added their pupils, and I also busted out my purple jelly roll and my Pentel sparkly silver pen, just to give some accent to the characters and the shapes behind them. And these pens glided over on both of them. And I also want to make a quick side note that during the peeling process, when I take the tape off, I just want to mention that I was using frog tape because it tends to be a little more gentle than masking tape, and I didn't want to risk my masking tape actually tearing some of the top layer of the paper off with it. And I still ended up having that problem when I was removing the tape from the Inuyasha painting. So the topmost area of the paper lifted with the tape and a couple of areas on the sides and the bottom. So I wanted to note that because this was a non-issue for the 400 series paper. Hey there everybody, welcome on back. So I decided that I was going to take a quick look just to do a price comparison, to kind of top things all off when it comes to this comparison video. And I did pull up the prices of the 11 by 15 cold press from the 300 series Strathmore and the Strathmore 400 series cold press, as well as the Canson XL. So I have their prices pulled up over to my side right now, and the Strathmore 300 series pad in the 11 by 15 size is currently going for $12.49 USD on the Michaels website, and the Canson XL in the 11 by 15 size as well, just to keep it all fair, is going for $16 right now. So as of this video, the 300 series Strathmore cold press is the cheaper one of the two, and I think it's the better deal, honestly, based on my experience with both the Canson XL and the Strathmore 300. Now, the 400 series goes for $15.99. Again, I'm going to say that the Strathmore 400 series is definitely the better cold press pad of the two when it comes to the Canson XL versus Strathmore. So overall, I still recommend the 300 series and the 400 series cold press from Strathmore over the Canson pad. I had a better experience on the 300 series, even though I did struggle with it. That was also in comparison to the 400 series. So it was comparing the same brand, just a different paper quality. So, and I've last used Canson XL cold press, so I can honestly say the 300 series is the better one of the two, and even if you're only saving a penny, the 400 series is still better than the Canson. But when it comes to the Strathmore lines specifically, I do think that the 400 series was the better paper. I'm not choosy about the color of the paper, so even though it is in off-white and like a super super pale ivory color, to me that's the only really color comparison I can make. It's not going to be a deal breaker for me because the overall experience for painting was definitely better, and if you're doing a full illustration, you're not going to see the paper color underneath anyway. So overall, I would say the 400 series is better than the 300 series, but at the end of the day, I know earlier I had said maybe it'll be similar. I may try the 400 series mixed media pad from Strathmore just to see if it sticks or not, but I'm going to stick with my 300 series mixed media paper, and if I want a watercolor on cold press, I'm going to use the 400, but I'm not going to just let the 300 series collect dust because I spent money on that. So that's going to be that for this video. If you enjoyed, please feel free to subscribe, ring the bell so that you get an alert for when a new video comes out, and I stream on Twitch every now and again, so I'm going to be going to school, so the streams are going to be far more scarce. So be sure to check this channel for any updated videos or anything of the sort, and I will see you guys in the next one, or I'll just be talking at you again, just like in the past 3. So that's going to be that, and yeah, subscribe, ring the bell, and I will see you guys on the next one.